that you identify with. Making silence as an everyday practice, spending some time in quietude, meditation, prayer, daily practice, physical movement, exercise, sport, fun. You don't have to be too serious. Fun, laughter, there's nothing which works better than that. Happiness building foods, which are fresh, whole, keeping the water flowing, drinking enough water, hydrating yourself, because aging is dehydrating. As simple as that. That's what Ayurvedic message is. Is that right? When you are becoming dry, you are aging. When you keep yourself oily, soft, supple, juicy, you are reversing aging process. So that's what Ayurveda is all about. You're doing the oil massage, you're adding ghee to the food, you're putting drops in nose, in the eyes, and the ears, and the oil enemas. Every hole, there's an oil for it. So you're keeping everything soft, oily, juicy, lubricating. That is reversal of aging. Dehydration is, it increases the pace of aging, death, decaying, driving. Surrendering, letting go, practicing forgiveness, cultivating patience, and enlightenment is not a destination, it's a journey. We call it as enlightened living. Ayurveda is the true template for enlightened living, living in accordance with the laws of nature. And you as Vaidyas, you as Ayurvedic doctors, practitioners, you have the best opportunity to grab their attention. Because when people are sick, they come and they have their backs to wall and they are willing to do anything you tell them. It's a great detour to really help them fix themselves. And it's a two-way process, is that right? It's slowly changing them and it's changing you. I often say, only transformed people will transform people. So make yourself a stronger magnet in this reaction. When you become a stronger magnet, everything that you touch will become magnetized. So I wish you all the best. Thank you. Namaste.
Very lively and broad perspective of health. We have a mixed audience. There are few students, faculty, clinicians, and we have a lot many questions. Let me start from the question about your journey. Nowadays, Ayurveda and yoga and Eastern systems is a buzzword, but when actually you went to US, how that happened and how you are saying this transition? Can you please share your personal story vis-a-vis the external environment that you are?
Well, I think I was a bit lucky, I would say. There's nothing unique about it. I was invited by His Holiness Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was the founder of the Transcendental Meditation Group. He was looking for some young Ayurvedic couples who are willing to travel, willing to learn a different aspect of Ayurveda to practice in the West. And somehow myself and my lovely wife, Dr. Manisha, we were chosen by him. We initially went to be with him in Holland. Dr. Lele was with us around that time. And then we were very young. We were in a different scheme where we were just starting our life around that time. We were very young Ayurvedic doctors and practitioners. We had basic Ayurvedic understanding and background and education and degrees, but we didn't know enough about the science of consciousness. We didn't know enough about how the Western medicine is practiced in different parts of the world. Because what we had to learn was different mentalities, almost different brain. The Russian doctor thinks very differently than a French doctor will think. A French doctor will think very differently than an American will think, or a Mexican will think, or a Brazilian will think. And we went to so many different cultures and countries which we were traveling. We were trying to identify the pearls from Ayurvedic tradition and maybe share that with people who didn't know anything about Ayurveda. And that kind of reprogrammed our mentality differently. So to answer your question, I think I was a bit lucky, but opportunity is an opportunity always. You should never stop growing, you should never stop learning. And I left India in 92, 93, I guess, and it's been over 25 years. My daughter is here with me. She's 21 now, but she was about a couple of months when she started traveling. So I think it's been a very enriching journey, which I've worked with some eminent doctors, physicians, scientists, researchers around the globe. And I see that they respect Ayurveda. As the Ayurvedic doctors are learning their lingo, they talk our language, and we are able to talk and communicate in their language now. And we must do that. We should be creating more and more bridges to be able to converse with each other, where sometimes I teach with them, and they are talking Ayurveda and I'm talking modern medicine, but somehow it works. Yes, Girishji. Anything else?
Yes, there are many questions, I think. Yes, Dr. Shirur.
Yeah.
So you can.
So your presentation was an excellent expression of Ayurvedic science in modern terminologies. There is one question in my mind. Ayurveda has become global and it has reached to the masses. But how to pitch that class of intelligentsia, those scientists? Because you have been successful, it seems. So how to pitch them for Ayurvedic research in Ayurvedic concepts?
Well, I think it's a good question, and there is ignorance in everywhere, and I somehow feel that people believe in this more easily than actually scientists and intelligent people. So many of the Western doctors have difficult time in understanding this, but there are two things that I personally do. Number one is that whatever you're presenting, it should have a lot of research, validation, background, how you talk about it, why you talk about it. It should be really corroborated in a manner in which it makes perfect sense, logical, practical, and more importantly, which is practical and applicable. That's number one. Secondly, even though there's a lot of mysticism about Ayurveda, there's all some kind of a voodoo science related with that. If you really select certain things that are pretty applicable and people are able to use it very commonsensically, and you communicate that with the doctors, with how you are writing, and the purpose of writing the books was talking about case studies and histories of people who have done it. And when you start doing this, it's a clinical practice, and you present those things. So we have various conferences where we go and we interact with people. I would say about 30% of people are very receptive to all of this. 70% of people are still very skeptical, but nothing succeeds like success once they start following, learning certain things. And there are mass gatherings nowadays where they are using Ayurveda as a template to create what we call it as wellness education. And I think we are taking some simple steps and tits and bits of Ayurvedic medicine. It could be as simple as drinking hot water. It could be as simple as going to bed at a proper time. It could be as simple as doing oil massage. But once you start explaining that embryologically what happens, how the brain gets created, how your skin is related with the brain and the central nervous system itself, and the oleation and the self-referral touch, what you're doing is regulating your central nervous system activities and the HPA axis that you talk about. So you need to actually look at the things that we have known all along and try to find the correlating scientific evidence to really convince these people. We should not be limiting ourselves to that, but I think it's a way, it's like a hook, which it grabs their attention. And you write about it, you talk about it, you teach that. I go to various Ayurvedic schools, we have our students, and many of them are really very smart, bright people. And initially they all start as skeptics, but by the time of the year, they're completely transformed. It's a great question, but we are working very hard to make that happen. Yes, sir.
Sir, I am thankful to you in different aspects. I am Dr. Vivek Odjikar. I just had been the keynote speaker in the Brazil for 3rd International Congress.
Oh.
Dr. Ranade sir delivered one video, and you were the speaker for that. He is the ideal person. You should observe him, and you should be in such a way, you should be very prompt there. Okay, he is an ideal person. You observe him, how he speaks, how it works, and just, I am very lucky I had actual experience of that. Thank you very much.
It's very nice of Dr. Ranade, because Dr. Ranade is a true pioneer. Because when we were in schools and colleges, he was the only person who was able to go out and talk about Ayurveda, and we were in awe and totally inspired what he used to do, how he used to say, how he's present today. I was with him yesterday, and I'm in absolutely admiration of this person, because I think these are the pioneers, these are the trailblazers. It's our collective job to take it forward now, because we need to live this way and we need to bring a lot of glory to this. We had our Independence Day yesterday, is that right?
Thank you, sir.
And it's interesting. It's interesting because as a country, we talk about this a lot. Means Gadi Madugulkar wrote something phenomenal, isn't it? Ye the naso nirasha thodya parabhavane partha sabodhakela ye the madhavane ha desh stanya pala gita kya amrutaji. Phenomenal. If this is in our genes, why we are not able to go out and talk about this so confidently? I think we are custodians. We are custodians of this, and we should be talking about this with a lot of confidence, with a lot of conviction. We should not be skeptics ourselves. Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Sir, I am Dr. Kalpana Sathe from Sumati Ayurved Mahavidyalaya, Hadapsar, Pune. Sir, my question is, these days, Dr. Dikshit's diet pattern is getting very popularity, and another Dr. Chaudhary from West, I think so, his diet pattern is also getting very popularity. Dr. Dikshit's concept, as all know, that eat only 2 times, and whatever you want to eat. And Dr. Chaudhary's pattern is eat fruits till 12 o'clock in the morning. If you are 70 kgs, eat minimum 700 grams of fruits and then eat only salads. What is your opinion in this?
Well, I think Dr. Kulri Chaudhary is a good friend of mine, and everything that we talk about in diet and dietetics is all rational, is all logical, okay? At the end of the day, you are all responsible. You should not be following any diet by reading any book, but being mindful and being connected to your own Agni, your own ability to digest, what you can handle, what you can metabolize. It's not what the book is telling and what you're weighing, but what you can digest. The fact is, yes, you should be eating clean, healthy foods, which are God-made, not man-made food, ideally. They are vibrant, they are colorful, but digestibility is even more important. Eating less often is the real key. Not eating, snacking in between the meals is the key. That's very important. Meals twice a day is a good pattern, but all you can eat or eat whatever you want is never a good advice to anyone, I would say. Okay? So using a lot of common sense. We always come up with something that is unique or novel, but at the end of the day, we as Ayurvedic practitioners, we have a perfect template to guide people, and I think we can read about some of those things, but we can create something which is very individualized for a given person, including yourself.
That is Ayurveda.
Thank you.
Hello, myself Dr. Santosh Sawan, Associate Professor in Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Ayurveda. So my question is, which is better time for exercise? Because since in circadian rhythm you mentioned 5 p.m. as better time for cardiovascular insufficiency. Regarding morning, 6:30 a.m. is peak time for high blood pressure. Again, you mentioned Arogyam Bhaskara Ichet, so that is you should exercise in the morning. So which is better time?
Both of those times. Morning time is really good. The reason being, you have slept for 7-8 hours before night, is that right? You're waking up after a good night's sleep. So the body is still very dull, heavy, sleepy, sluggish, full of kapha. And if you do the exercise at that time, you shed the heaviness and you gain the energy for the rest of the day. But at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, you're tired working all day long and you don't have enough juice or energy left to do a vigorous workout at that time. So morning workout is still the best. It's still an ideal thing.
So maximum death between 7 a.m. to 9 a.m.
That's correct. Before you eat anything. Before you eat anything. It's before breakfast activity is a metabolic reset itself. The 5:30, 6 o'clock activity is very good for sports. It's very good for hand-eye coordination and movement and your ability to hit the balls or do any kind of sport where you need a lot of those activities and attention. So for that is a greater efficiency at that time. But if you do both of those times, that's even ideal.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Gunwant, you had a question, please.
Yeah. In India, it is observed quite often that scientists, they are quite open for new concepts like Ayurveda, Yoga, but clinicians or modern medicine practitioners, some openness is still more needed. What is your experiences in the United States? As you mentioned, Elizabeth Blackburn, who is a Nobel laureate working on telomeres. What is your experience and interaction with scientists and how they look at Ayurveda?
I think they are very, very open now. It used to be the case that they used to look at this something which is an ancient, outdated science, but I think we have created a wonderful case now that they're looking at Ayurveda with a lot of respect. And I happen to be a colleague of Dr. Deepak Chopra, and he has done phenomenal work in talking to the scientists, talking to the community, in terms of literally opening their eyes. But there are many more like him. There are many more like him, which do not talk about Ayurveda clearly, but it's all Ayurvedic. Dr. Andrew Weil is there, Dean Ornish is there, Mark Hyman is there. There are so many people who are out there who are having a deep respect for Ayurveda. And medical fraternity actually believes in those people, because what the plan that they're coming out with, the templates of functional medicine that they're coming out with is fully accepted. So even if they don't openly use the word Ayurveda, but everything that is being talked and written in those books is all Ayurvedic in nature. Our job is to really look at those things, look at those templates and communicate with people more effectively. And there are skeptics every time, everywhere you go. I go to conferences, people are there. They want to look at evidence-based medicine, okay? And we don't have enough research papers, and Dr. Patwardhan is trying to come up with more and more visible, accepted research. Means before the genomic stuff came out, nobody believed in the variation in body type. Is that right? So I think it's time that we are creating efforts in research, in clinical practice, in application of so many facets of Ayurveda, so that wave, that surge is created in which people are going to respect that. And especially here in this country, Indians are very difficult cases to talk about Ayurveda in that country, okay? So I'm talking about Indian patients. They are having real hard time in following Ayurveda because they still look at that from a very different lens. And this epidemic of metabolic syndrome, diabetes, is the highest in Indians who live as an immigrant population in that country, because Indians are the only vegetarians who don't eat any vegetables. It's a total grain-based and flour-based diet. And in the name of protein, they're eating a lot of cheese. So it's really prone for diabetes and vascular inflammation. So it's very difficult to convince them to change their age-old eating patterns and start eating, thinking, living differently. But it takes time to make that change happen, and slowly and steadily. And this is going to happen because no country, however rich it is going to sustain the cost of healthcare. There was an article that came out in Time magazine not long ago. It called about high cost of cheap foods. So they looked at $1 menu in all the places, in McDonald's and Burger King and Taco Bell, and then calculated if one person eats a $1 menu at one time, how much money we have to spend on taking care of this person's health. And that number was $179. For one person who is eating a $1 menu at one time, you and me as taxpayers will pay $179 to take care of that person's health. And those are people who cannot afford healthy, good, decent foods, and they do not have health insurance. They are a total burden on the healthcare system of the country itself. So you make cheap foods more easily available, it's going to crumble the system much more easily. And even hospitals, the way they provide you food, I'm not talking about this country, but that country, I think it's a great marketing strategy, isn't it? The way they feed you is horrible food, chocolate milk and jellos and awful foods. It's like buy one, get one free, come back soon. And I think the shift and the change in awareness is happening in Indians, in the immigrant populations, people who have money, who have resources, who are able to think, who are able to read. And I think the most difficult thing that has happened, that we thought about, 30, 40, 50 years ago, that any child who is born, let's give them few shots and immunize them and vaccinate them, and very soon there won't be any disease left. Are we there yet? No. We might have created more diseases because of that. So we thought about mass inoculation and getting rid of that. It's all about going back to taking control of your own health one more time. And in order to do that, they don't have a template to educate people, what to tell them. If I asked a Western medical doctor, tell me how to be healthy, what are they going to say? I think we have a lot to say as Ayurvedic practitioners. Yes, any more questions, please? Yes.
Sir, thank you for your wonderful and motivating lecture, we can say. Actually, I have a question for years together in my mind regarding circadian rhythm. It was still there when I used to deliver lectures in Europe. Since that time, this question is there in my mind. I'm hoping some way out for it. In India, we are talking about circadian rhythm and Ayurveda. In India, there is a differentiation or proportion of day and night. Changes hardly by 1 or 2 hours in different seasons. In a summer season or in a winter season, it may be 1 or 2 hours, more or less. But in Europe, especially northern of Europe, when there is a winter, we can see that the sunset is in 3 p.m. in the afternoon itself, and it rises at around 8 or 9 in the morning. So 9 to 3 is the only day left with very less sunlight. On the contrary, in the summer season, sun sets at around 12 or 1 in the night, and again rises at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, like that. In that way, we get only 2 or 3 hours of night. In countries like Norway, there is a sun for 3 months and night for 3 months, like that. So how to explain this circadian rhythm, and eat only when there is daylight, or sleep whenever there is a dark, when our sun is setting? So how to convince those people, and how to convince ourselves scientifically that what is the exact role of circadian rhythm and of sun? The sub-question for this is, if we see wild animals.
Let me answer this, Paulie. So I think it's a good question. It's a good question, and it's good whenever you are exposed to light and darkness, your body responds to that much more easily. So the initial experiment, how chronobiology came into effect, was in the 18th century. It was way early when we started talking about chronobiology. They started looking at mimosa plant, which was opening and closing the leaves at certain time of day and night. So at certain time, it will open its leaves, and we see this in so many plants also. Is that right? And certain time, it will close its leaves. When it's dark, it will close its leaves. When it's day, it will open it. And they start thinking that, God, this plant is able to tap what is happening outside in the light. So they put that plant in total darkness, and it was still able to open and close the leaves at the same given time. So we do say that the circadian rhythms do respond to the light, but there are these deeply embedded genetic timers which are cyclical in nature, which changes at 12 hours every time, which regulates the activities even in milliseconds that are happening. They are called as infradian rhythms, they are called as ultradian rhythms, and these rhythms are happening for smaller amount of cycles. And even a single cellular organism is able to tap and follow that. To simplify that for human beings, we are talking about dividing your day into 12 hours. 12 hours of night, 12 hours of day. Even if it's daylight all along, you still have to pull the curtains and go to bed at a certain time. And I have lived in those parts of the world, and I have given them more or less the same kind of answer, in which no matter where you live, you still have to divide the day into 12 hours of activity and 12 hours of silence. And you need to create those junction points and allow your body to actually respond to those timings. Your physiological functions are still happening, even if it's not corresponding to the season or the daylight itself. So the effect of the changes of the seasons and everything are also felt at a cellular level. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And sir, some small sub-question was there. If we observe these wild animals, so they have nothing to do with the sun or the moon. They are awake in the night, they are sleeping in the daytime, then again getting up, eating, again sleeping. Their 2 hours, 3 hours pattern is there. It is so much special in humans that we have to be more stringent with the morning or daytime working and nighttime sleep. Why it is this type of different nature in mammals, we can say. We can see tigers or
I
lions.
think they are more connected with themselves and their physiological functioning than human beings. They don't have to go and take nutrition classes anywhere. They don't have to go and learn these things. They are more in sync with how the body is behaving. We are more and more disconnected, and that's the reason why we have to explain these and allow the body to understand. And we were doing those kind of things not long ago, is that right? When we talk about 100 years ago, 200 years ago, we were waking up. There's an interesting book that comes out and talks about how the light bulb has changed the physiological behavior. Because it has created this artificial light and artificial activity that you do because you have forgot hibernation when to do. Because we are not decent animals anymore. We have become something more shift industrialized human beings in which our circadian rhythms and our chronological entrainment with the nature has shifted. And one of the experiments that we recently did was, we took a bunch of volunteers and took them for camping outdoors. We took them in Colorado where they were spending about a week or 10 days out in wilderness, no cell phone, no light. You wake up with dawn, you go to bed at dusk. And everybody started going to bed 2 hours early than their usual time. Everybody started waking up 2 hours early than they usually wake up. So within 1 week, they were able to get with the rhythm what the birds were doing, what the animals were doing around them. What the nature was asleep, they were asleep. When the nature was getting awake, they were getting awake. So we are not living or having the close proximity of the natural setting, which is creating a lot of disruption itself. So many people say that if we become a good animal, we should be happy. They don't eat when they are sick or something, but we don't follow some of those things. But anyway, I think it was a good question. Anything else before we conclude?
Yes, myself, Dr. Manoj Fadni.